Yeah.
Movement skill competency is the foundation of who we are.
It's like you need to set up an obstacle course.
Yeah, dodge the trucks.
I think the hardest shift for a lot of teachers right now is they have to shift their why.
And I think that's probably the biggest downfall of education in general.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a little more personal with the smaller classes.
Like, oh my God, I got all this anxiety built up.
I think that, to me, that's the hardest part, is how do you create that community in a virtual setting?
She usually takes the first couple of minutes and does like a soft start, for lack of a better word.
We spend a lot of time talking about that self-ownership.
I can't imagine how tiring it is to teach to a blank screen.
Yeah, I like to learn in like small group discussions and large group discussions.
We take care of one another and we do no harm.
Welcome, physical educators. This is Thinking PE.
Because Phi-Ed is more than just fun and games.
I'm Stacy Nelson,
And I'm Jamie Seneca.
and it's our goal to dig deeper beyond the activities that make your class awesome.
So buckle up and join us on this journey.
Welcome to another edition of Thinking PE. Jamie, I've been thinking. You know what I've been thinking about?
Go for it. What have you been thinking?
Well, it's thinking PE. I should be thinking. So I'm thinking. I actually, oddly enough, I've been thinking about Mr. Rogers.
I've not seen that movie yet.
No, you need to see. You need to see the new movie and any type of biography that was done about him. You don't have to, but I've been just thinking about that, partially because I just turned 50, and I just been noticing some of my values, even in my gymnasium, are shifting towards thinking a lot like he does. And it just was amazing to me, the gift that this man had at his ability to make a culture. I mean, he created a subculture in the United States, well, probably worldwide. And he made people that he never met feel loved and appreciated and accepted just the way they are. And that's what I want in my gym. And I also want kids to have fun. Yes, I don't want to lose too much of that, but that's just really, really growing in importance to me. And I want to create that culture.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was an absolute master at creating a culture with millions of people he did not know. And I think a big part of that was authenticity. And he truly, truly cared, even though he didn't know, but he truly had passion for what he was doing and believed in what he was doing too. And I think you tie that to our gyms as well. You know, as teachers, we truly believe what we're doing. We truly care about what we're doing.
Yeah. No, I like that. And this idea of creating a culture now is what we're talking about here on this podcast. And I had some fabulous help in this hashtag 6 feet PE discussion we had last Wednesday. And it was amazing what we learned about creating a culture. Part of it is we're all teaching in different situations. So, I mean, the world has changed. And so now creating culture is different. And whenever there's change, you have to give some things up. And you're kind of put in a position where you get to really think about what's super important and really not let those things go. But the hard part is there's some things we just need to let go. And those aren't always easy to let go of.
You know, and that word change there can be one of the most frightening words in education as a whole. And often one of the words that are also met with the most resistance. I mean, try and change a lunch schedule by 5 minutes, or a recess schedule, or change somebody's prep time. I mean, you are playing in some dangerous territory right there. Now, go back to now you want to change your culture.
Yeah.
You want to change your culture, and how much thought is going to go into that, and how much why and how much effort is going to go into changing your culture.
It's a ton. Yeah. Because I don't want to lose the good things I had, but I'm going to be adding different things that I think are important for these new parts of this culture we're going to bring in. So is it time to kind of set up the first part of this interview we're going to listen to? I
think so. You know, I'm excited. I am one that I am excited for change. I embrace change because there's a lot of new thought that comes out of that, and it either reaffirms what you're doing, or it inevitably changes the way you approach things. And either way, it can be looked at as a positive.
Yeah. In this interview, I already got some things out of this interview that I took since Wednesday between then and when we're recording this part. And I've used them in my class. So I'm super excited that other people are going to benefit from this discussion. So we're going to lead into this first piece that we dig into what people are doing to establish culture in their either distance learning, hybrid, or in some people are all in with all their students. So it kind of bounces around. You have to kind of keep track of what people are talking about, but I think there's some great nuggets here for you. Enjoy.
But right now, I think my biggest challenge is class sizes and trying to keep them engaged for 30, 40 minutes at a time when there's only so few of them.
Okay.
But I mean, I kind of at the same time, when I have 10 or 12, I always like even numbers. I can do a lot more with even numbers. That's just kind of a personal thing for me. But when I get 10 to 12 of them in there, it's a lot better. But the classes where there's 4 or 5, it's tough. It really is. So
It's too easy to wear them out.
it is. It is.
Do you look at that differently when you're thinking about a culture or the overall feeling in your classroom? You got 4 or 5 of them in there, 4 to 6, compared to 12 or 24. Do you look at that differently to go, you know what, I'm gonna change my whole atmosphere, and I'm gonna treat this more as a small family, or if a group of kids came over to my house, versus trying to teach it the same way, but you have this big open gym and it just, you know what I mean? It just sometimes can feel awkward. Do you look at it differently at all, or how do you look at that?
I think when you kind of explain it like that, yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm a little more personal with the smaller classes. Not that I am. I mean, we're a small school anyway, so I know all the kids. But yeah, I think when there's 3 or 4 of them, like I feel, with social distancing, I can get a little more engaged with them instead of trying to monitor so many at the same time. So that's been kind of nice, being able to do some more stuff with them and do the videos with them and kind of play with them. Like I found myself today kind of playing noodle tag with them just because there weren't enough of them. So yeah, I think I could probably look at that like that.
Interesting. Okay. Lauren brings a unique perspective to this because she's teaching at the middle school level, and relationships are different. The whole culture, you have to kind of treat it different. What do you find? Are you teaching inside or outside, Lauren?
A little bit of both. So this week is actually our first week of school. So the first couple days we're on a A-B schedule. And we have a day 1 and day 2 schedule. So the first 3 days or so have been pretty much the same, going over our procedures, classroom, stuff like that. So we haven't really got into a whole lot of activities yet. But for me, I'm so used to having my day 1, day 2 kids, or even everyday students, obviously with last year. So now I only see my kids once a week. Because then if they're on a day 1, day 2 schedule, then they go to like their choir or their band or whatever music they're in the next time they're at school, because they only come twice a week. So I've been so used to seeing them every other day that I need to now get in the habit of only seeing them once a week, which has been challenging for me because I'm just not used to it.
What does that mean for you as a teacher trying to build culture if you're going to only see them once a week? Do you approach it differently?
A little bit. I think for the first month at least, normally I only do team building stuff the first week or 2 of school, but I think I'm going to have to push that out and find ways that we can do a lot more team building stuff and building those relationships, just because I only do see them once a week. So extending that out a little bit more. And then I also have 3 sections of distance learning classes that are just solely distance learning, that I've been going on Google Meets and having different interactions with them too, and just trying to build relationships that way also.
So what's your strategy when you are approaching those kids and you're doing Google Meets? Do you look at it as, okay, this is time. I'm going to give each student some time so everybody has a voice? What are your priorities as you're thinking about distance learning and having that small time online with them?
A little bit, yeah, but again, they're a little like skittish about, there's 25 people in this Google Meet, I don't really know if I want to turn my mic on and talk about whatever they want to talk about. So we have Fridays are the days that everyone is distance learning. So I was going to set up some small group Zoom meetings during my office hours and stuff and try to get kids involved that way so that they're not in a huge Google Meet with 25, 30 kids. So maybe doing some more smaller
Nice.
group meets. So
I think that's a good idea.
yeah.
Be
At
interesting.
least something, especially this first week, and even if they're for like 10 minutes, like they don't need to be super long ones, just so I can get more of them in that time. But
Okay.
that's kind of where the direction I'm heading right now. So
Cool. I'm having a harder time teaching. I'm teaching outside. Normally I teach my first lesson inside purposely to establish some routines. It's a big gym, but it's still more intimate. And I feel like I have total control in a gym over the atmosphere, over the culture, and I can set that in 1 30 to 40 minute session. I feel like I can set it. Outside, I feel like 3 days into it and I'm still struggling getting the kids to buy in the same way they did before, to get as excited about the activities. Kindergartners, goodness sakes, just getting them to understand when I say grab a ball and stand on this line. I didn't realize how difficult that the instruction was for a kindergartner because I got kids going all over the place, and in the gym it's easier to corral them and teach them this is a line. I mean, you have to back up to that point, and I don't know, I'm just outside struggling. It's just not coming together like it had. It's coming, but it's taken 3 days, whereas in the gym is 1. And I'm going to put that out there for you. Those of you who have taught outside, or those of you college students, if you just had some field experience or just ideas, any thoughts into how you can create that intimacy and attention grabbing when you're outside compared to inside? Any thoughts or insight onto that?
I don't know if this is helpful at all, but one thing I was just thinking for differences in following directions possibly from inside in a gym to outside is, I was wondering, I don't know if you have any options on this or what the school setup for you is, but I was just wondering if there's some place that you have outside that maybe it could be have less distractions. So like if there's somewhere that, if you have one side of the school where you tend to take them out to and it's a busier street and there's cars going past, I could see it, especially kindergartners, that anything fast and colorful, that's going to catch their eye. And
that's what I was just about to say.
Where in a gym, you got those 4 walls around you and most of your distractions are going to come from other students where not necessarily, that stimuli right around them. So
that's a great point, Britton. I'm glad you brought that.
And it is, because it's truthfully, some of us that have been teaching a while, you get set, I don't want to say you get set in your ways, but you get set in your own routines where I've always taught here. We've always taught on this field. I've always used these lines, and it just takes somebody to say something a little bit different. Like, hey, why don't you use that hockey rink over there? Or, hey, why don't you use that, why don't you use the recess area?
Yeah.
And just that little bit of different, like, oh yeah, because I'm the exact same way. So I appreciate it.
No, that's a great thought, because what I do have is cement trucks, and we're still in the middle of building projects out there. So I'm not only fighting the regular stuff, but we got construction. I got people in yellow jerseys that we're having to walk by to get there. We've got, what do you call it? Those sprinkler systems being put in right by me, and they're digging, and so that maybe that can make me relax a little and think, oh, okay, there's reasons that they are so distracted, because there's cool stuff going on besides, the cool teacher I got in front of me. There's a lot of really, really fun stuff going on. Great.
Sounds like you need to set up an obstacle course.
Yeah. Dodge the trucks.
Jump over the ditch.
Oh.
Unlike your feet are in cement. Oh wait, they are in cement.
Huh. Have any of you
So
that are taught outside felt that at all, or?
I will say I haven't taught outside, but one of the things that I think would work inside and outside is early every year, I play lots of music that has directions to it. And so if you have that access to being able to play anything outside with a speaker system, because I really push the concept that the kids have to be able to hear and then respond all of the time. And so it doesn't matter what it is. And so early on, we'll play a song that just has lots of directions in it.
Okay.
And it can be something simple. Like one of my favorite ones for like even my kindergartners is stand up, sit down. And so it has them stand up, it has them sit down, it has them stand up, it has them turn around and sit back down. But it's kind of like Simon says, you have to do it when you're told, not knowing what's going to happen and happen before. So if they get ahead of the song, I actually tell them that that's wrong. That they have to do it with the song when the directions are given. Just like in my class, you may know exactly what we're getting ready to do, but you have to wait until the directions are given to start.
Okay.
And so with my younger kids, I push that really hard early. And so later on, I don't have as many issues. But that, and all we do sometimes if I need a review is I just go back to those kind of things. Another one is roar like a lion. And the kids love it because they get to make lots of noise and get into different postures.
So you just
concept of
tell
just
them to
following.
roar like a lion and then they do, or you do different animals, or you?
Well, I'm really bad at like technology. And so I use YouTube, and the lady has songs on there. And one of the songs is Stand Up, Sit Down
Okay.
on YouTube. And she has another one that's Roar Like a Lion. And so they get down like they're in a standing up and they get a big pose and they make as much possible noise as they can roaring. But they also get down and make mouse noises. So we're working high to low. They get in a sheep position and baa. And so they get to have fun with it, but they have to be in the right position at the right time, doing the right thing, so that we get in that habit.
And I could duplicate that outside without a screen.
Yeah.
And just have fun roaring like a lion myself. And
right.
Yeah, and that's actually where I'm struggling. Is I use a lot of visuals, and I use a lot of technology to assist me with my visuals with the screen. You know, we would go through our PBIS, our positive behavior intervention system, and that's school wide. It's, you know, respectful, responsible, cooperative, and safe, and post that up. Or I have instant activities where the kids come in the gym, they see the activity they're supposed to do. And where I'm struggling with outside is I have to find different ways, and I think I'm going to move to just try showing it on an iPad and see if I can, and see if that helps. But we run into that problem, you know, for every solution, there's a barrier, because now to see the iPad, we have to get closer together, but we're in a situation where we have to be socially distanced. So one distinctive thing I'm moving towards this year is, and Christy, this came directly, it was that movement from the classroom management to the classroom culture. And you helped me put that into words, is with the social emotional impact that I think is so important this year. That is going to be my key throughout the course of the year, is that safe part. And I have a poster on it. It's got a picture of somebody hurt, you know, somebody bumped their head, you know, a clip art cartoon character, and that's physically safe. And then we have the emoji, and that's what we call emotionally safe. And that's the one, what I show them is the physically safe. We have Band-Aids. If you get a bump or a scrape, we have Band-Aids to fix that. The emotionally safe, that's the tough one, because sometimes we can't see that you're hurting until it's too late. And that's the other part I struggle with mask on, is I'm usually very proactive, and that I can see when a student is struggling. I can just see facial expressions or student interactions that, okay, that interaction over there it looks like it's not going to be going well. So I can be proactive, but now with the mask on, I'm finding myself having to be more reactive. And that's the struggle I'm coming up with, is trying to create that environment where everybody's emoji safe, where it's okay to make mistakes, and supporting each other in that.
Great. Jamie, that kind of led me to some of the more questions I really want to do to drill into this. Thinking about classroom culture, what would you say are some of your top priorities to that you purposely build into your culture? Like Jamie just mentioned, it sounds like you're really focusing this year on that SEL portion. You're really going to build that into your culture about being a safe environment. What are some others or similar ones to that or different that you really put as a top priority when you're thinking about creating this culture? What is important?
And I would chime in real quick, because that's the biggest shift. Is I think we as FIA teachers and myself, is we naturally promoted that in our class, but I don't know that the students put the emphasis on it. And that's the shift I want to make, is that the students are more like a learning target, where our learning target might be for the day, I can step with my opposite foot when I'm throwing. So they're focusing on that, and we're instinctively encouraging them to share and take turns and cooperate and help each other. But I never really put the focus on that part of it. And that's the shift that I'm making this year to create that culture.
Gotcha.
So as my classes get older, so like about third grade, we start to spend a lot more time on this going up. But the concept of self-ownership, it's always been there in my class, has been one of the major pushes, because I'm not going to be there forever.
Right.
And I think that's probably the biggest downfall of education in general, is people feel that teachers have to be the ones leading the kids around by the nose all the time. And it really has to become a kid-driven or a kid thought process where they take self-ownership. And so like right now with us being online, I've told several people this one, our biggest thing I think is we have always needed more parent involvement in education in general. And right now we have to have them involved. But at the same time, the kids have to take ownership of what they're doing. And so like I can give them things to do and I can have them do activities, but ultimately right now they're at home. You know, they have to take that ownership and go do it. Because literally they could, in some aspects, go, yep, I did that. And they never got off the couch.
Yeah.
But which is why I like the Flipgrid, where at least for a moment in time, I'm getting to interact with them while they're doing an activity.
Yeah.
And we can try that some when we're online, but it's still, I can't make them turn the cameras on. You know, ultimately, if I have a kid sitting in the corner that doesn't want to participate, I can't do a whole lot with them when we're online, like I can when we're in the gym. And so we spend a lot of time talking about that self-ownership of what are you going to do to make your life better in the long run.
Hey, Stacy, that section right there had a lot of good insight on developing the culture. And, you know, I guess one thing that really resonated with me, or what made me think is having taught 15 years and develop, you know, I don't want to say naturally developing a culture in my class, but you just go through, you just develop your class the same way every year. And all of a sudden we're forced into a different situation. And here we are trying, you know, myself personally trying to develop the culture the same way I might have done it in the past.
Yeah, it is. That was the question I shared with the group. It really has been amazing to me when I'm trying to do the same activities. Even like the first day I just did a red light, green light. And in the gymnasium, I just feel like I had such control over the atmosphere within 10 minutes of those kids entering the gym on the first day of gym, even if I hadn't seen them before. And I did red light, green light outside. I had a speaker, but we have to stay 6 feet apart. So now you spread these 25 or 26 kids out times 6. I don't know, you do the math, but they're spread out and they're still having fun. They're still laughing. They're still giggling. They still love when I trick them and I say, you know, instead of green light, I say green lantern, and they have to go back and they still have fun. But it was so much more energy for me that I had to push and I had to yell louder and I had to, you know what it's like out when you're teaching kids and they get distance between them.
Mm-hmm.
If your proximity isn't there, that's one of the first things we teach in, you know, learning how to manage classes is when you're on one side of the room, the kids on the other side of the room just naturally their attention starts to drop. That's why they teach teachers to move around. And that's some of the things I'm struggling with. Not that they're goofing around, it's just they lose the intensity
and now they're not anticipating. And that's part of my culture, is having these kids anticipate the next game. They can't wait to do the next game. I don't know, is that what you're thinking too? Or you, when I say culture, have a different definition in your head?
Well, yeah, it is that up close and personal aspect that you're alluding to there, and just when you spread them out, it inherently becomes more difficult. The culture piece of working together, of allowing each other to make mistakes, of helping each other in that cooperating piece.
Mhm.
Again, all of a sudden we're spread way out, where normally you're just it's more, it's close together. And I just find that more difficult to create those opportunities, given all the health restrictions that are put on us, and for good reasons. But it does add a layer of difficulty.
Do you think, I'm going to use the word intimacy that just came to my head. Do you think it just feels less intimate when you're outside and you're purposely spreading the kids apart? You're purposely doing activities that keep them from, I mean, we're doing soccer, but instead of doing as much partner stuff where you're interacting with somebody, I'm having them do solo drills. Do you think there's something in there that's causing this less intimacy, and with the less intimacy, it's creating a different atmosphere?
It is, for me. It's more of the lack of visuals that I use. And I just say that because especially in the gym, whether it's a learning target or a stop signal, whatever I'm trying to reinforce, it's verbal, it's demonstrations, and I have a visual up on the screen. When you bring that outside, even holding up signs and stuff, again, you have that proximity, that intimacy. Now those kids that are way in the back can't, and I talked there about holding an iPad. Well, I mean, you gotta be pretty close to see what's on that iPad. So that's the piece that I lost, is combining or reinforcing learning targets, reinforcing benchmarks, 5 key points of throwing, and I'd have them up on the screen and refer to them throughout the class period. Well, that's at this point, it's not available outside.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because again, that's a little bit more your style, a little bit more visual. I use some visuals with the big screen in the gym, but not nearly to the level that you do. And so I haven't missed that part. I use more intimate, I don't know if it's more intimate, but this contact, kind of like I bring them into the squads, and inside the squads are closer. Now with COVID, I've spread the squads out so it doesn't feel as close. And that's where I get in. They can see my eyes, and I get excited about the next activity that we're going to do. And I'm finding that's the culture part that I'm missing. Again, it comes back to that distancing that we've been talking about.
And that might be the piece of it too, with the mask that we have to wear. You don't get to see their reactions as much as they don't get to see yours.
Yeah.
And that was one of my fears going into this year of distance learning, is I rely tremendously on body language and facial expressions when it comes to, especially noticing kids that are struggling.
Yeah.
And we've only been at this for a couple of weeks, but that's a obstacle I'm definitely going to have to figure out here.
Now, are your kids wearing masks outside?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We do unless they're spread out, basically doing individual stuff far enough apart, then they can take the mask down. But if we come close together to do, whether it is a tag game or a small sided game or those, but we come in closer proximity, then the masks go back up.
Okay. So ours is a little different than that, where if they're outside and they're assuming we're going to keep a reasonable distance, then they're not making us wear our masks outside. So there's a little difference there. I am able to read their faces, but again, when you get a certain distance away, it's harder to do that.
And add the whole new level of distance learning on there. A couple of the teachers, whether it was a Justin or Kyle teaching that distance learning setting, now they're trying to develop a culture in a world that we're not used to. Because like we had talked, we were able to ride the wave last year from relationships we built. Now we have to start off fresh again. I haven't seen these kids in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to build those relationships, and I find that incredibly challenging.
Yeah. Talk about distance. Lauren mentioned that too, that not only proximity, but she's only seeing her kids once a week. And then she's got all these distance learners that she's also trying to make connections with. And their struggles are real. And like you talked about now, you're trying to do something that we used to do. You've done it for how many years in your gym, and now you're trying to do it on a computer through the internet.
You know, but in our conversations, you brought up a great point of starting small, in the idea that you're not going to develop that culture no matter what the setting. That's not just going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, and starting small, starting with the personal interactions with individual students, and maybe that soon becomes a small group, and then, you know, eventually hopefully builds in a distance learning setting where kids are interacting with each other.
Yeah, and that example came from doing the podcast. When we first started doing the hashtag 6 feet PE, there was that dead time where, you know, if I just asked a question, if we have 12 people on a panel, nobody answers.
Yeah, we like to call that wait time, except the wait time is like
Yeah,
minutes.
I call it awkward time is what you do when you're podcasting.
Yeah.
Dead time, or there's lots of names for it, I'm sure. But yeah, the idea then, I just started calling people by name with easy questions, and then giving them an out if they didn't have anything. If it looks like they're stumbling, they don't have an answer, call on somebody else. But that'd be the thing I think I'll do with distance learning too. If we have to do hybrid and I have to do some distance, I will build that in where there are just some simple questions. I think Justin mentions it, where even his son does some of that kind of stuff, where his son just asks other kids, hey, what did you have for lunch? And everybody gets to answer, and it creates again, you're just trying to create a culture where it's safe. And now I did speak up once, and now another time the teacher asks for my answer. And again, if I don't have an answer, they're really generous with moving on and saying that's okay, or, you know, that type of a thing. But I like what you said, just keep it small, keep it simple at first, and then maybe even create other places for them to interact where they do write out and maybe type it out to, there's different tools that they have where you can do an article and you respond to different people's replies. And now they're interacting, even though it's not voices yet, but then take that and build it up. And once the culture is built, then you'll be able to have them actually speak instead of just type, and that type of thing. Just to step by step build it up. And I think you said it well. It takes time.
Yeah.
You can't do that in one session.
So in this next section, we'll continue this how to develop a culture talk. But the interesting part with this one is Christy was sitting and listening, and then came up with 10 really, really great questions and concepts that really made us think in a different way. So let's listen to those.
So I'm sitting here listening, and I have about 10 things written down, but they're kind of ping-pongy things. So they're not necessarily just related to your last question. That's kind of how I operate. I like to listen, and then I just write. Do you want me to share some of the things that I wrote down?
Share 11 of them.
11, I can come up with another one. Well, so one, your PBIS, have you translated the PBIS for your outdoor space? You know, do you have a PBIS matrix?
We do.
So have you thought about what that looks like literally in your outdoor space?
No.
So that was just a thought, and maybe to even let some of the older kids be responsible for creating that. What is safe in this space? What is respectful in this space? What is responsible in this space? Because I think the PBIS, it needs to change based on the situations we're in now. So that was one thought I had.
Nice.
So with the whole having kindergartners outside, and they're so curious, and I think that's the awesome thing about them. And so instead of trying to avoid the distractions, use the distractions. Literally take time to go over and talk about the distraction, and then find movement in the distraction, and use that movement to create a story that's a movement-based story. And so then the kids get to become what their distraction is. And eventually the distractions won't be a distraction because you've taken care of the curiosity aspect of it. Just thoughts. So kind of let them explore it. Base your lesson on it. So, if you have okay, I'm brain dead at this time of the night, but you know, whatever skill you might be working on or concept, can you frame it through the lens of the distractions you have outside? You know, say you're working on movement concepts of pathways and levels and size and shape. To me, you could take whatever the distraction is,
Sure.
and weave the movement concepts into that, so then they become the caterpillar or the sprinkler system, or you know. So that was just another idea I had.
Interesting line.
What?
I said that's an interesting line to think about, how to process that. I like that train of thought. All right, keep
Well,
going.
it's just,
I like it.
you don't want to, I don't know, you know, with kindergartners, we don't want to fight development. We know that we know they're curious. We know that they have a short attention span. We know all those things. I think sometimes we tend to try to fight them because we think they're being naughty when they're really just being who they're supposed to be. I did teach. My first job was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I did not have a gym, and I taught elementary.
Yep.
And so I had to be really, really specific about the visual boundaries that I would have to create outside.
Mhm.
I used hand signals and flags. So I used a lot of, instead of just trying to use my voice. So they had to be looking at me to see the certain hand signals that I used. What about a full value contract?
Explain full value contract.
So you two guys can help a little bit with this, but basically, from a really simplistic way, it's where each student identifies a commitment that they're going to make
Okay.
that will help the collective good, the shared community, and that becomes an actual visual that is done. And so one way to do it is you have all the kids take their name and they have to come up with an adjective that describes who they are, and it has to start with the same phonetic sound as their name. So like I could be Crazy Christy or Caring Christy or Kind Christy, and then I would have to come up with what's my contract that I'm going to commit to giving to the group. So I might say that, you know, I promise to be on the lookout for anybody who doesn't have a partner. You know, I'm just making that up, or I'm going to be responsible for noticing when equipment is being used how it shouldn't be used. So again, I'm kind of brain dead right now with my examples on the spot, but full value contract, I think, is the more that you can get kids to take ownership, and so it's their safety rules, it's their responsibility rules, it's their respectful rules. And I really believe kindergartners can start doing this. If you keep it, even like, I love the visuals, Jamie. I really like those visuals that you do use. Have you ever considered taking pictures of the kids and having them be your visuals? You know, having kids do the sad face, and then they become part of your visual. They love to see themselves.
Nice.
And that's where I struggle outside, is how to present those. And I think I'm moving it as rudimentary as printing them off so that I have pictures on my clipboard, but I'm just so used to having them, you know, giant visuals up on a screen in the gym.
How about a yardstick? A yardstick with the actual visual cut out, and you tape it to the yardstick. Or like fly swatters. I used to use fly swatters all the time. I would just buy them from the dollar store, and then I would take my laminated images,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd be on the end, and so then I could hold that up in the air. This is really taking me back to you should see my buckets of homemade stuff like this. You know, all the stuff that everybody puts on technology now, I have it all homemade.
Yep.
You know, the actual stuff. So those are just some thoughts. I love the idea of using music too, Justin. I mean, I think music I'm very picky about whatever the signal is, only use that signal for that one thing, you know, so to have a stop signal, whatever that might be, if it's a whistle or whatever, but don't use that signal for anything else. And just, I'd spend the first few days just making games up where they practice all those, you know, they practice starting and stopping.
Go ahead, Justin.
As them stand up, sit down, turn around.
Mhm.
That's one of we use the stand up. So I can use that all year long.
Right.
I have the sit down. We can use that one all year long. And then of course I use listen, but again, it's always making eye contact. Find me. You need to know where I am. So the minute I talk, even if I'm on the loudspeaker in the gym, you need to know where I am, not where the sound's coming from. And so that's one of the things we train them to find me. You know, when I have a signal or a cue that gets their attention, it's find me and then look for whatever the next thing is.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Do you have any more on that list, Christy, or?
I don't want to feel like I'm talking too much, but I think using the inquiry-based model is now more, I always have thought it's a really powerful model to anyway, but you know, I liked what Justin was talking about is giving them the skills and the capacity to take ownership in the us and we. So it's not just me, but it's us and we, and it's our shared collective success. But so teaching the students, how do you use a plastic bag to be active? Teaching those kids, how do you use paper plates to be active? So again, what I'm talking about here is more that virtual learning, but literally giving them those skills. And back to the whole idea of how you create community, I think one of the biggest things is kids have to know that other people in the class share things that are in common with them. And so doing any kind of activity where kids get to share and show what they like, even like what color, you know, I love the this or that activities that have been going around on Twitter. And I mean, so many people have made so many templates, but you know, cat or dog, which do you prefer? You know, hot dog, hamburger, which do you prefer? Just things like that.
Stacy or Jamie, which do you prefer?
Yeah.
We're not going there.
But I guess when students know that there's other people in class like them, and they might not have even known that before, you know, just building that community where we take care of each other. Somebody that's in this cadre that I've started, he's from California, and his big thing is just really focused on teaching his kids to do no harm. That is our only rule, to do no harm. And everything he does is framed through that lens of that is their only rule. We take care of one another and we do no harm.
Like that.
I think kids need to understand that PE is not going to be the same as it was in the past either, you know. So kind of explaining that to them, you know, I know, you know, I did that early was, hey, PE is going to look different. It's not going to be like it was last year, you know, or the year before. So explaining that to them too, I think is beneficial.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Exactly, Kyle. Express that to them, but also reassure them that it's still going to be fun.
Right.
And that we're still, you know, I'm still here for you, but we're still going to have some fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And depending on where you're at, it might not, like my kids wouldn't notice a lot of difference, except for the fact that they have masks and they sanitize their hands on the way in, and they notice I wash the equipment in between, you know, in between events, but we're still doing a lot of the same things as we did last year.
But maybe it's an opportunity to change what physical education is. You know, I just really want to look through that lens. There's no time that in my life where well-being has been more important than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, taking advantage of that and shifting what we're all about. And, you know, I hate saying this, you guys, you know, I helped write those standards and benchmarks, but we wrote those standards and benchmarks for a very different time. And are they what's most important now? Don't tell Mary that I said that. I hope
It's
she
recording.
doesn't hear this podcast, Mary. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't value them. I think they might be missing some things that are probably important now.
Or maybe shifts to standards 3, 4, and 5 a little bit heavier and a little bit away from 1 and 2, or, because that's kind of been the focus, at least in elementary, is more on 1 and 2, and shift a little bit more to 3 and 4. I don't know, but I think you're onto something. It's at least a good question worth asking for sure, Christy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the answer,
Right.
but I just think it's an opportunity to rebrand what is physical education.
Yeah. I'll be honest here. I have a little bit of a fear though that we lose. You have to replace something, and a lot of things I hear coming down the pipe feels to me sometimes like we might lose some of the really good things that only PE taught. I don't want to get away from teaching kids some of those basic skills that if they don't get, then they're not going to enjoy these activities into early adulthood, into adulthood, and they may never. I mean, I've heard my mom talk about that, being a woman back growing up before there was women's sports. She says, I don't like doing family volleyball because I never learned how to play volleyball, so it's not fun for me to go out and play with you kids. And that's what I don't want to shift all onto SEL and lose those pieces. That's all. I'm just saying we do want to be careful when we do.
And I'm not saying. Yeah,
Right.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying shift away. I mean, if I was standard 1 is what I'm about.
Yeah.
I am very much about developing competent movers, but I'm more thinking about shifting the way that we do that. To me, SEL isn't a thing. It's not an add-on thing. It's a thing that fits into everything we do. I just think the approach that we take and where we place our values. No, but I totally agree.
Yeah.
Movement skill competency is the foundation of who we are.
Hey, Stacy, the first thing that grabbed me from that last section there was the PBIS, and I really bought into the PBIS model. Just number one, because of how what we do in our gyms, what we can do in Fayed, can complement the culture that the school is trying to set. And that's what I've always done, is taken the PBIS model that the school has adopted, and then adapt that and adjust that to my gym so that the kids are hearing a similar message that resonates throughout the school. And I think as physical educators, we see all the kids, in the entire school, and we can really build upon that culture that's trying to be established.
Yeah, for those schools that have PBIS specifically, they know what you're talking about there. And I think it's super important that no matter what your building is doing, as so many of us Fayed teachers have so many of the kids. Like I have all the kids at some point, not every day, fortunately, but the idea, I have all of those kids. So if I can reaffirm and reteach and use that similar language, it just helps out the whole culture of the building. Like you said, it's a pretty strong impact.
Not only do you see all the kids, you see them for 6 years, if you're in a K-5 setting. So you have a tremendous opportunity and responsibility to build those kids from kindergartners up through to 5th grade there.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, this year it hasn't been my priority. I'm kind of disconnected from what the rest of the school is doing. I think a lot of those teachers are reteaching those values and the PBIS, foundations, and I haven't been doing that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I'm going to focus on that this week as I go back, as just kind of a benefit to the whole school and a way to reconnect my kids and myself with the school.
And that's where my visuals were adopted from, was through the collaboration with the other specialists and the school as a whole.
Yeah. Yep. Something else that grabbed me was when Christy was talking about how important, or at least a benefit, for students to see and hear that other students have similar thoughts or similar likes or similar attitudes towards things, and that games like this or that
or just asking them, you know, do you prefer hamburger or hot dog, that type of a thing. Simple things like that can really make kids feel at home, going, oh, there's other kids that prefer hot dogs. And they don't think about this consciously, like, oh, now I feel part of this group. I think that just builds that in. And kind of like we were talking about earlier with distance learning, those types of questions, just start slow and build that culture little bit by little bit. And over time, then these kids realize they have things in common with everybody. And they also have things not in common, and that's okay. And that's the culture you build with asking questions like that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I started that in distance learning last year with my fifth graders in a goal setting opportunity where they would write a goal and then develop a pre-test and a practice plan. And my role in the distance learning was to help facilitate that development of a practice plan to help them achieve this goal. And what I got from it was I got to see a lot of the kids' interest. You know, this kid likes skateboarding, this kid likes softball, this kid likes basketball. And where I wanted to grow is now I have this student over here that's practicing on softball pitching, and this student over here is practicing on softball pitching, and putting those two students together where I would be the facilitator, you know, and okay, I saw this student said that they were standing in front of a mirror and practicing their pitching form. Maybe you should try that. Where I want to go is putting those two students together so they can collaboratively, you know, develop a practice plan to get better to achieve their goals.
No, that's a big goal, Jamie.
It's absolutely a work in progress, and a lot of, you know, made a lot of mistakes, but you know, you kind of learn where kids are going to stumble and how to reteach things and how to explain things and just how to make it grow. So I'm excited to try it again this year.
Yeah, I respect that. That takes a lot of focus, attention, and kids will notice that you remembered and that you know that about them. And again, that's part of the culture. The teacher knows who they are and their likes and that kind of thing. I like it.
A piece that also caught my attention in this section that I was glad to, I mean, it popped up again. I was glad to hear it was that SEL, that social emotional learning.
Yep. Came out again, where it's built in. You can't teach FIAD without teaching SEL. It can't do it well anyways. How's that? It is an intricate part of what we do every day. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Justin. One of his little games that he talked about there with, I looked a video up where there's the stand up, sit down one. Here in this last section, he was talking about using his hand motions during the stand up, and then he pushes his hands down. And then after he does that video a few times at the beginning of the year, he just has to give the hand motions throughout the rest of the year. I went and used that actually this week. So we recorded this last Wednesday, and now we're talking a few days later after the week has transpired here. So, and it's really helped me between him and what Christy was saying about elementary or the kindergartners, really trying to get into embrace where they're at with their ages. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? Just standing up and sitting down, those kids had so much fun. I mean, it was stand up, sit down, turn around. And that was more fun than they had the whole rest of the time in FIAD, just because we added a little music and a little hand motions, and we get a little goofy with it. So just a shout out to Justin there. That I went back, I tried it, and it really got me mentally down to the kindergarten level. It's just not natural for me. Some people are naturally kindergarten teachers. I enjoy them, but I don't think like them. And it takes some purposeful thought. And that's what those two helped me get to, that is that purposeful thought. So big thanks to those two for that piece.
And a big shout out to myself for biting my lip when you said that part about not thinking like a kindergartner. And I didn't chime in. So
you didn't. I set you up. I gave it on a platter.
But going back to building a culture in a community with the PBIS, the SEL, and all those things that were talked about. In this next section, we're going to continue that conversation, but it's going to be geared more towards the distance learning in the virtual setting. So let's see where that takes us. Well, in creating that community, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that's the most important part. And that's why I probably struggled and fell short the most in the distance learning setting at the tail end of last year. And Justin, you being in distance learning right now, and Kyle in a hybrid model, I think that, to me, that's the hardest part, is how do you create that community in a virtual setting? Because
Yeah.
it's just something that's way outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm married to an 8th grade science teacher, and every day he sits there and he's teaching to a screen of all these images that the kids use instead of their face.
Well, let me
Makes
ask,
it very hard to teach that way.
Oh, it is.
let me ask Ben and Britton this, and whether it's on Dr. Malley's class here or any of your other classes, how have you felt like you're part of a community with your fellow college kids in a virtual setting?
For me, some things that have helped was one thing that Dr. Malley does at the beginning of some of her classes is she does kind of she usually takes the first couple of minutes and does like a soft start, for lack of a better word, where we're allowed to, discuss with each other a little bit too, because speaking as a student, it's a little sad to not see my classmates because I'm not in person for most of my college classes. And so, seeing them on a computer screen helps a little bit, but it's really nice because when I was going to classes in person, I'd always arrive 5 minutes early or 10 minutes early to class. And the other students that were early, we'd sit around and we'd talk until class started. So we got some of that community and bonding where when it gets to video calls and Zoom, a lot of people they'll get on last minute or the meeting won't even be started yet. So it was one thing I really like is just the starting, it doesn't have to be a lot of time, but just 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe have just some sort of simple question like, what was something fun you ate yesterday, or really anything. That was one thing that I find helpful as far as like the social emotional learning.
I absolutely agree with Britton. Yeah, just giving that little bit of time really does help, make the class feel more comfortable. I know, like personally, I like to learn in like small group discussions and large group discussions. So sometimes the breakout rooms really do assist me a lot. And I especially like it when professors and teachers will take those extra, like they'll be like, okay, let's be honest, this discussion may only take 5 minutes. I'll give you guys 10 minutes because I can, join that breakout room of people who I'm not sure who's going to be in that group. And I can join, say, hey, everybody, how's everybody doing today? And, I can, in that small little group, we can just have that quick little preparation discussion, make everybody feel a lot more comfortable in the call, because I do understand that it is especially difficult to be, just to talk to a camera instead of, people's faces, So I definitely appreciate being able to take the time, even if it's just 5 minutes out of the class period, just to be able to kind of ease into it with my classmates. Like Britton said, I absolutely miss it when I'd walk into class early and Britton would just have his one random question of the day. And every time I loved him. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I mean, absolutely random. And it got the entire class who was there to get involved in it. I mean, yeah, there were food related, sports related, it didn't even have to do with the class. It was just a great way to get the class speaking and prepared to talk and just feel more comfortable joining a class. And I think that can possibly transfer online. So maybe doing just those short intros just to kind of, almost like an icebreaker, just to kind of get people ready to start.
Nice.
My only fear with that, just because I know how my middle schoolers are, my 7th and 8th graders, that they would just type it in the chat and be like, oh, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't actually take their microphone off and like speak. Just because I realized it yesterday. I asked a couple of them that were on early what fun things they did over the summer, and they just looked at me.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, see, exactly. I wouldn't have even thought about that. Like
okay.
that's like that's like saying like, the professor, at the beginning of the semester goes, how was everybody's summer? And everybody just takes out their phones and emails them the answer. It's like, it's like me talking about that. I wouldn't have even thought about, my potential students doing that. Like this new setting is just so, even though we're 6 months into it, like it's still such a new setting. I wouldn't have even thought about my students doing that. And
Right.
yeah, you're completely correct. Like you'd have to find ways to, go around that obstacle.
Right. And that's why, like, yesterday I had my Google Meet with, I think it was 24 kids, and I got about 2 kids talking the whole time. That's the only 2 I heard from. And I heard it from a couple in the chat, but it wasn't anything major. So yeah, just I really like that idea, but I just would need to get some buy-in from my
Mhm.
middle schoolers, and I think that's what the small breakout groups would hopefully work for. But
Yeah, Lauren, that's my husband's experience. I mean, they will type their answer with their blank, there's no face on there, and they
Right.
won't talk.
right,
He did get one of them who plays a guitar this kid will play his guitar with his picture on, and he kind of plays a song when everybody comes on.
oh, that's
Um,
good.
but I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how tiring it is to teach to a blank screen.
Right. And then it's not like you can't really say, well, you have to speak, because then that just completely can shut down kids mentally and emotionally. Like, oh my God, I got all this anxiety built up because I have to find teachers making me speak. So you don't want to do that to a kid either.
And truthfully, that's
Right.
that's kind of similar to what we would experience in class. If you needed a demonstrator, and you pull that kid that's uncomfortable and put him and force them into that situation, and you actually create a negative experience versus a learning experience.
Right. Right.
So I got a couple for you on this one. So in Flipgrid, one of the things we're doing is the kids have to give us a short video of them doing it or explaining their favorite activity that's physical. And then so they put that in the video where they have to talk it through or show us. And then we can share that after I approve it with all the other kids, and they can make comments back and forth.
But
And
I
so
like
that gives them comment back.
I like that
Yeah, I
adaptation
love
where I don't have to if I'm a little bit nervous, I don't have to demonstrate that. I can just talk about it.
Right.
What grade
Yeah,
level,
and you
grade
still-
level do you use that for, Justin?
We're using that one for 3rd through 6th.
Okay.
And then another one that's kind of funny. So my youngest son is in 2nd grade, and I've gotten to listen to their meet sometimes. And my son is obviously the ham in the class to some extent, but he'll get on the meet when it first starts. Let's say it's right after lunch, and he'll go, "Hey Susie, what'd you have for lunch?" And Susie will answer, and he'll go, "Hey Tom, what'd you have for lunch?" And he'll go through the whole class and ask them what they had for lunch. And so then they're actually getting, and it's really simple, it's really short, and I think that's actually been a good one. So this morning they did breakfast. What'd you have for breakfast? And oatmeal or eggs or whatever. And so that was a unique way for them to interact with each other. And it's actually not being driven by the teacher every day, but I think the teacher did it at some point in time early on. And a couple of the kids have grabbed it, because I've had other teachers tell me that when he happens to not be in the meet, somebody else takes that job and asks everybody what they had for the breakfast or lunch or whatever, something that's really simple and sweet. Another one that I'm dealing with right now is I'm teaching a college class, and getting my college kids to talk to me. And I've had to explain to them that, in a class, let's say you have 25, in a room or in a Zoom, it's easy to lose kids and not hear from them. I mean, that's not a hard thing to do. I said, but in my particular college class, there's only a handful of them. And I go, you stick out like a sore thumb when you don't talk and you don't have any comment. And I said, and it's hard. One of my professors one time said this, agreeing with somebody is not a comment. And so you have to add something to the presentation. And so one of the things we've done is I kick out articles to them every week to read, and they're short for the most part, but they have to go into those articles in Google Drive and make comments. And then I drive my conversation off of their comments and then add things to it. But I said, I've got to have you participating in the class. And so if you're not talking, you have to give me something in this document. And then, of course, then I encourage the kids to attach on to somebody else's comment. And so that's trying to get them to have a class conversation.
Christy, you had
You know,
a kind of
James,
comment a little bit ago.
yeah, I think the hardest shift for a lot of teachers right now is they have to shift their why. You know, we have to be willing to let go of certain things that we used to be able to do that we can't do anymore. And that's been super hard for me to figure out what is the most important thing for students to learn right now. And you know, you think, oh, but they have to learn this, they have to learn this, they have to learn this. But you know, what is really important right now? And I think I took a class this summer, and our first assignment was actually the same assignment that I gave in your class, you guys. What do you want your students to say about you in 20 years? What do you want them to remember? You know, what do you want them to remember having learned? You need to start with that. And that's where you need to work backwards from. If that's really what you want them to remember, then what are you teaching them now that will help them remember that?
So Jamie, Christy posed the question, what do you want your students to say and remember about you? Have you thought about that question?
All summer long, and
Yeah.
right when I come up with an answer, then it changes as more information comes out, as we try new things. It seems like it's ever progressing, but ultimately the culture that I want to establish hasn't changed. It's the culture I've always established. I want that to continue to grow and develop into a greater culture.
Can you give a few details without, don't share what you want to, but share what does that mean?
You know, I want to continue to create an environment for kids where it's okay to make a mistake, where they're comfortable making mistakes, where we embrace making mistakes, and then we encourage each other to continue trying. And then when we finally accomplish something, we celebrate that together. I mean, that is part of the culture. I want to create that culture of mutual respect between myself and the students, where they know that in that moment when they're in my class, that they are important, they're valued, and I care that they're there. I do truthfully care that they succeed. I mean, those are the fundamental that's a fundamental culture of my gym class that I don't want to lose, no matter what setting it is. It's how I'm getting there is constantly revolving.
Okay, so you have thought through those core things, and you're finding the core hasn't changed, but some of the approaches are changing, and how you're getting there. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely a fair statement. You know, the way I've created that culture in the past, I think we are creatures of habit. The way I've created that culture in the past, there's that proverbial roadblock right now.
Okay.
And rather than trying to just pound straight through it, we've got to find a way around it.
So you're kind of using this time as a good opportunity to reassess your culture. What is it that's super important, and trying to keep those core things, because whenever you're forced to change, you might have to give some things up, and you're really trying to think hard about those core things that you really don't want to lose. If you have to give something up, it's going to be something else. Yes? No?
You know, for me, it's some of those core things aren't necessarily going to change, but definitely how I will achieve them will.
Okay. So like
What
being
about yourself?
outside.
Yeah, I was gonna, being outside has definitely added a challenge to it, because I'm just not used to being outside this early in the school year. I would say that's a pretty easy, I don't want to say easy, but when I look at somebody that's doing distance learning, I think I've got it pretty easy.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah.
What about you? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I thought about it a ton, partially because I turned 50. And this was before COVID. And I just have started to notice my style when I was 40 and teaching was this super high energy, yay, rah, rah, I'm going to get the kids. And the kids are loud. My gym is loud and they're having fun and it's crazy. That's what I wanted. But I've noticed as I'm getting older, it's hard to bring that same energy every day. It's hard to do cartwheels myself and do tumbling, and it made me reassess. If I got to teach till I'm 65 or 62, I may not be able to bring that same energy. And so I've thought a lot about what's important, what culture I want. In the past, it's been, I want these kids to have a blast. That's been the top priority. And I'm going to sneak the learning in while they're having so much fun. They may not be able to tell me what my learning target is, but they practiced it and they got it. And it's kind of more the Mr. Miyagi type of teaching. I'm starting to look the direction of Mr. Rogers, if that makes sense, where that's becoming more important to me, where every student comes in and not necessarily comes in wild and crazy screaming and has a blast that way, although I don't want to lose too much of that. What's more important, the culture I'm more focusing on now this year and last year, is more that every student that comes into my gym, I want them to know they matter.
Yeah.
I notice them, that I care about them, and they're okay just the way they are, even though we're going to keep trying to get better at skills or whatever we're working on, but they are an okay person. That, for whatever reason, has risen up in me. Maybe it was the Mr. Rogers movie. Maybe it's getting older. Maybe it's just reprioritizing. I don't know. But so, yeah, I've thought a lot about the culture and what it is I exactly really want to create. And it's hard to kind of, I've done things pretty well, I thought, with the high energy. Now to bring this piece, I'm not as good at getting that message across as I'd like to be. I really would like these kids to know how loved they are and that they're okay just the way they are. And I'm still looking for ways to bring that across. So anyway, all that to say, yeah, I've thought about it, and I'm trying to raise those on the importance list. But like Christy was saying, this is the time that we can reassess. We can look at how we're putting things out. We can look at what really is important. And that's hard for us teachers. It's hard for anybody, I think. But
Yeah.
we really do need to look at, say, like you've done, and say, these are the things that are super important. Whether I'm inside, outside, or at a distance learning, I'm still want these things to come across. And I don't know, I just think it's important to do what she said there with those things. Any more thoughts on that?
Well, I think a big piece there, going to what you said about, each kid feeling valued, and that's that relationship building. And now, I keep bringing this back to the distance learning setting is how do we create that in a virtual setting, and that continues to be a challenge. Is we know what's important, we just how to get there yet.
Yeah.
And in everybody's, I don't say in everybody's defense, but it is one of those things that it starts small. It starts with those individual interactions, and maybe it does grow to smaller groups, and then pretty soon you have the students interacting with each other, and you've created that community and that culture that you've wanted to establish. Yeah.
And you and I have had a conversation, probably off air, but I remember we've talked about this. We've talked about how important our research has shown that it is to build relationships, and whether it's distance or in class. And we kind of had to come to a understanding that when I have 670 kids, I'm not going to be in relationship with all those kids. I'm not going to be able to build a relationship. But what I can build is a culture. And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about here, is I can still build a culture that they feel important, even if I don't know their pets' names and even their parents' names necessarily. So I think there's something in that we really can cut ourselves a little bit of slack and really focus on this thing we've been talking about today, is the culture. What is the feeling these kids have from being in your gym?
And take it to a virtual setting, and you're Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was an absolute, Mr. Rogers or Captain Kangaroo or whoever, they were an absolute master at making millions of kids feel like they were valued, and they didn't have a clue who these millions of kids were, but they were able to create that culture and that environment where that kid watching that half-hour episode honestly thought that Mr. Rogers, in that moment, this individual child was the most important person to Fred Rogers.
Yeah. And some of the tapes and, interviews, and people follow him on the street, and people will walk by him and go, "Isn't that Mr. Rogers?" And they'll run back and say, "I just need to tell you, you changed my childhood." And you're like, "Mr. Rogers never met you." But he thought he cared about you.
And I'd take it one step further, is Mr. Rogers didn't put on a show. He truly did care.
Yeah.
He knew how these millions, and in a way, when we have our 650 kids, it's important that kids in that moment think that, not just think, they know that we truly do in that moment, that kid is the most important thing. And it may just be a split second interaction, but that I truly do care that they are succeeding.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. Yeah. We can't just put on an act here. Even if you don't.
It's authentic.
Yeah. Even if you don't, like we said, know every kid intimately, you do care about them. And that has to come across for sure. Yeah. So we have a question for our listening audience here is, what do you want your students to say and remember about you? And what do you want them to remember about what they learned this year at school?
And that is Thinking PE. Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at Thinking PE. Find us on all your favorite podcast providers by searching Thinking PE. For more resources and videos, go to www.thinkingpe.com. Thanks for listening.